Hello, viewers, and thank you for tuning in to our special newsletter. Today, we're diving into one of the most controversial topics in recent American politics, President Joe Biden's alleged use of an automaton to sign pardons in the final days of former President Donald Trump's term. This is an issue that has the public and legal experts questioning the legality and validity of these pardons. An automatic pen, also known as an autopen, is a device that can replicate a user's signature without requiring direct intervention from the user. It is a valuable tool for leaders, especially presidents, when they have to handle a large amount of administrative work in a short period of time. However, when used in important contexts such as signing pardons, the autopen has caused controversy over the legality and transparency of these decisions. The use of autopen is not new in the history of U.S. presidents. Previous presidents, including John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon, used the device to sign important documents while maintaining a busy schedule. The first autopen was used in the 1950s, when the need to sign important documents increased, but the time and attention of leaders were limited. However, in recent years, the use of automatic pens has become a controversial issue, especially when they are used to sign pardons or other important decisions, which can raise questions about the legality of these decisions. Modern automatic pens are often controlled by computer software, allowing the user to adjust the movements of the pen to closely resemble the original signature. Some versions use simpler mechanical devices, with the movement mechanism controlled by small motors or mechanical parts. Some versions of automatic pens are capable of generating many identical signatures in a short period of time, allowing leaders to process a series of documents without having to sign each one. This is important for presidents or government officials who often have to sign thousands of documents in a short period of time. To understand the context of the controversy surrounding the use of an automaton to sign pardons, we need to go back to the events that occurred in the final days of Donald Trump's presidency. It was during this period that a number of pardons were signed, and they attracted particular attention, not only because of the recipients but also because of the process of signing them, which involved the automaton. One of the most controversial pardons was the pardon of Roger Stone, a former close Trump advisor who was convicted of crimes related to falsifying testimony and obstructing the investigation into the Trump campaign's ties to Russia. Many believe that the pardon was politically motivated, intended to protect a close friend and important supporter of Trump's campaign. In addition to Roger Stone, many other individuals were pardoned during this period, including those involved in financial scandals, fraud, and other crimes. These pardons have been met with strong opposition from critics, who argue that they represent an unfair and politically influenced pardon system. While these pardons have caused outrage and controversy because of who was pardoned, there is another equally important aspect: the process by which they were signed. Many have questioned the legality and formality of these decisions, especially since some important documents, including the pardons, were reportedly signed with an automaton, rather than by President Trump himself. Former President Trump has not directly commented on the use of an automaton in the process of signing the pardons. However, after these allegations were made, some reporters and legal experts began to question whether the use of autopen in these important decisions undermined their legality. Some defenders of the use of autopen argued that it was a necessary tool to help the president handle a huge workload. Signing thousands of documents in a short period of time is impossible without the assistance of devices such as autopen. Some argued that as long as the president directed and approved these decisions, the use of autopen should not be considered a legal issue. However, there are also other views that the use of autopen is a sign of a president's efficiency. They argued that signing a large number of documents in a short period of time is necessary, and that autopen is just a supporting tool, not a sign of irresponsibility. When allegations of President Joe Biden using an autopen to sign pardons in the final days of Donald Trump's term were raised, the White House issued official and unofficial responses to clarify the situation. Despite mixed public and media opinions on the use of autopen in important decisions, the White House stood firm and defended the legal process related to pardons. The White House asserted that autopen is only used as a support tool, not a substitute for the president's final consent and decision. The use of autopen, according to the White House, only helps save time and ensure that important documents are signed on time without affecting the decision-making process. An important point that the White House emphasized is that all pardon decisions are agreed and approved by President Biden before signing, whether by hand or with an auto pen. The White House has explained that all of President Biden's pardons are carefully prepared and reviewed by legal advisors before being presented to the president for approval. Then, once the president agrees with the decision, the documents are signed, and in some cases, an auto pen is used to copy the president's signature onto the documents. A key part of the White House's response has been its assertion that the use of an auto pen is legal, even when it is used in important decisions such as pardons. White House legal experts and advisors have said that there is no rule prohibiting the use of an auto pen in these situations, as long as the president agrees and the orders are signed in accordance with legal procedures. The White House has also stressed that signing important documents via an auto pen is only to support administrative efficiency, especially in the context of the president having to sign a large number of documents in a short period of time. Despite the White House's explanations and defenses of its use of the auto pen, criticism has continued from political opponents, especially former President Donald Trump and his allies. Trump has claimed that Biden's pardons are invalid because they were signed with an auto pen rather than by the president himself. This is a serious accusation, intended to undermine the credibility and legitimacy of decisions made during the transition period. With the debate continuing, the question of the use of auto pen in important decisions has not been fully resolved. The White House will likely continue to defend its right to use this tool as an effective means of supporting administrative work, but it may also need to clarify the legal processes and be more transparent about the use of auto pen in the future. If these debates are not satisfactorily resolved, there may be changes in the regulations and legal processes surrounding the use of automatons in official government decisions. This has implications not only for pardons, but also for how decisions are made in other areas of government. The use of an automaton to sign President Joe Biden's pardons has sparked a wide-ranging debate about the legality and transparency of political decision-making. In this context, much of the debate has centered on whether the use of an automaton undermines the legality of pardons and undermines public confidence in the government's decision-making process. An important part of the pardon process is that the president must personally exercise his or her power by signing these authoritative documents. However, there is nothing in the Constitution that requires the president's signature to be handwritten, or that explicitly states that signing documents with an automaton violates any principle. Therefore, the use of an automaton does not violate the Constitution as a legal matter. It is simply an aid in the exercise of a legitimate power that the president holds. However, the legal issue becomes more complicated when we consider the legality of these decisions in a political context. Although there is no strict legal regulation on the use of automatons, lawsuits may be brought to consider if the legality of the decision is disputed. This could lead to a review of future signing procedures. Although the use of automatons is not necessarily illegal, it raises another equally important issue: the transparency of the decision-making process and the credibility of the government. One of the fundamental principles of the American political system is the transparency and accountability of leaders in the exercise of their power. When major decisions such as pardons are signed without the direct involvement of the president, the public may feel a lack of involvement of the head of government in the decision-making process. This is especially important when pardons may directly affect the rights of citizens or set a future legal precedent. The use of an auto pen may reduce the formality and create a sense of lack of accountability in the eyes of the public, as people feel that important decisions are being made without the full involvement of the president. Although there is no specific legal basis to suggest that the use of an auto pen invalidates pardons, this issue still needs to be clarified through debate and possibly legal action. In some cases, if there is a challenge to the legality of a particular pardon, the courts will have to consider whether the decision was made in accordance with due process and with the oversight of the authorities. However, in practice, it is difficult to prove that an auto pen pardon is not legal if all the legal processes are followed properly. Therefore, the complexity of this issue is likely to make it a subject of long-standing controversy among legal experts and the public. When the issue of President Joe Biden's use of an auto pen to sign pardons came to light, public and political reactions were clearly divided into two camps. On the one hand, there were those who defended the decision, arguing that the auto pen was a useful tool to help the president perform his administrative duties effectively. On the other hand, there were also many critics, arguing that the use of an auto pen in important decisions such as pardons was a sign of a lack of transparency and accountability, especially when these decisions have a profound impact on the rights of citizens and the fairness of the legal system. Those who defend the use of auto pen also argue that this tool does not reduce the legitimacy or formality of the decisions. They emphasize that in any case, the auto pen is only a supporting tool, and the final decision still belongs to the president. Supporters argue that as long as all legal processes are followed and the president agrees with the decision, signing with an auto pen is reasonable and does not cause any legal problems. Moreover, they argue that recognizing an auto pen as a legitimate tool in administrative decisions does not mean that the president is not involved in the decision-making process. In fact, this process still requires the president to participate in selecting pardon recipients and approving documents. The auto pen only assists in implementing these decisions quickly and efficiently. In contrast, a significant portion of the public and President Biden's political opponents oppose the use of an auto pen in important decisions. They argue that signing pardons with an auto pen is a sign of lack of accountability and transparency in the administration. In particular, in important decisions such as pardons, the president's failure to sign directly may undermine the legitimacy and public confidence in government decisions. Many believe that in matters of high importance such as pardons, the president's handwriting will demonstrate personal commitment and responsibility for his decisions. They also believe that such decisions require the direct involvement of the leader to ensure that such decisions are made fairly and transparently, especially when they affect the rights of citizens or sensitive issues in society. In addition, some argue that the use of automatic pens in such important decisions may set a dangerous precedent, as other leaders may also use automatic pens to sign decisions without actually participating in the decision-making process. This could lead to important decisions being made without the full oversight and involvement of those responsible. In addition to public reactions, the issue also has a strong political element. President Biden's political opponents, especially those who support former President Donald Trump, have used the signing of pardons with an auto pen to criticize the Biden administration. In a highly tense political context, the use of an auto pen has become a tool for Biden's opponents to attack the lack of transparency and accountability in the exercise of power. These opponents argue that not signing pardons directly is a sign of weakness in leadership and governance of the country. They believe that the president's failure to directly participate in decisions of great importance is an abdication of responsibility, which could damage the public's trust in the Biden administration. Opponents have also used this criticism to attack Biden's pardon decisions, especially when some of the recipients are involved in politically sensitive issues or have close relationships with the president. They argue that the Biden administration may use the automatic pen as a way to hide decisions that the public may disagree with, which further raises suspicions about the political motives behind these decisions. President Joe Biden's recent use of an auto pen to sign pardons has become a controversial issue not only in political circles but also in the broader public. While the use of an auto pen to sign administrative documents does not necessarily violate the Constitution, the lack of transparency in signing important decisions has raised many questions about the legality, accountability, and public trust in the government. Given the current controversy surrounding the use of auto pen, it can be predicted that this issue will continue to be an important topic in political and legal discussions in the future. While tools like auto pen can help leaders save time and improve work efficiency, their use in important decisions like pardons will continue to raise questions about transparency and accountability. One possible future trend is to revise the rules and guidelines for the use of auto pen, to ensure that important decisions are still made transparently and with the full participation of the president. There may be improvements in the process to ensure that tools such as auto pen are only used for low-impact administrative decisions, while important decisions are still signed directly by the president or authorized officials. In addition, legal bodies may consider revising the rules on the legality of decisions signed by auto pen, to create a clearer precedent for future presidents in the exercise of their power. The issue of the use of auto pen in President Joe Biden's pardons has opened up an important debate about the legality, accountability, and transparency of decision-making. Despite its benefits, the use of this tool in highly legal decisions is still an issue that needs to be addressed carefully. In the future, there may be changes in processes and policies to ensure that important decisions still reflect the will of leaders, while ensuring their legitimacy and transparency.